Great. Well, let's get, we're going to kick off here. Hello, everybody. My name is Oliver Bruce. I am the co-host of the Micromobility podcast. I'm also really excited today to be welcoming Christian from Ubiq, who is going to be talking about the vision of how we build shared mobility and what the future of that looks like. I think it's a really important topic, one that I think about a lot on the Micromobility podcast, because I think no one company can do this by themselves. So as we build ecosystems, it's very important that we work out how to make that so that everybody can participate, or as many people can participate as possible. So thank you. Wonderful to have you here, Christian. I'm gonna disappear. I'm gonna let you do your magic. In the meantime, we will have, if you do have questions for this, please drop them into the chat. Jessica from the Ubiq team is there and we'll be able to answer them for you. Otherwise, Christian, off to it.
Wonderful. So thanks a lot, Oliver, for the introduction. Very happy to be here and excited. I'm gonna take a look today at our ecosystem from a bird's eye view. And before I do that, basically, what I want to share with you is we're really excited about winning the category award for the best sharing platform in fleet operations. This year, we're absolutely honored, and there's more to come from our side. So just a few words on us, what we do, and I guess the reason why we were chosen also is because we make sustainable mobility profitable. So everything that's shared mobility suffers heavily from creating a positive business model. And we tackle the breakpoints of those business models, and our technology contributes to that. So we enable a lot of shared mobility providers out there in the world to be more profitable or become profitable, and to make the whole ecosystem more sustainable. So how do we do that? We have a platform that is connected to thousands of different data sources and is predicting very accurately where demand will be at what point in time on a microgranular level, so per meter per second. And then we generate a number of products out of that, which leads to a huge increase in revenue. So automated rebalancing is one part that makes sure that vehicles are where demand will be. So it's a perfect match of demand and supply, and a constant challenge to keep that in balance. Predictive charging, very similar, to create a situation where you have the optimum state of the fleet in terms of being charged at the right point in time, at the right positions. Very similar as battery swapping for the micromobility world in terms of creating a missing link between the fleets out there who need to be charged and the infrastructure side, which is basically providing those batteries. And what I really want to point out here, and this is also the first aspect of the cooperation or collaboration part, is we create a massive amount of impact, not alone as a company, as a technology company, but with our community service called StreetCrowd. So there are 20,000 members across various countries, across various continents by now, that utilize our platform to execute on certain opportunities that add value to a specific mobility operator, and add value to the ecosystem, and add value to cities by basically taking fallen scooters and bringing them up so they don't necessarily annoy citizens on the streets. So we're already live all across Europe. Actually, our first customer was in the US. We brought back that success to Europe, and our newest kid on the block is in Latin America with Otto. They're rolling currently out all across South America. So when I was asked to basically contribute to the session today, I was thinking about what topic could fit. And one of the things that I recognize now, being in that market, in that ecosystem for some years, is that there are a lot of lonely wolf type of companies that focus on a very specific section and very specific piece within the ecosystem, and try to make that best. What I don't see happening that much is collaboration between those companies. So I see a lot of opportunity actually going missing, and I feel that joining forces also on a strategic level to create the overall different value experience and user experience for end users is something that is going to be imperative for us to be successful and to really accelerate the change that's happening out there. So I've basically thought about three theses that basically support that approach. So the first thesis, especially here in Europe, I don't have that much insight in the US, but I think it's not that much different. There's a huge situation of confrontation between the public and the private side. And a lot of people, especially on the politician side, on regulation and legislation, forget that at the end of the day, we're all in the same boat. And it can only work out if we combine the public sector, public transport, with all those upcoming private mobility options, such as micromobility and shared mobility. So just some examples that are happening like right now or here in Europe. One of our customers, the CEO Oliver Macron from Miles Mobility in Germany, one of the leading car sharing companies now in continental Europe, he is really in a fight with his hometown in Berlin because they're setting up more and more hurdles for a car sharing operator to operate in terms of parking, in terms of restrictions, where to have the cars located, et cetera, where the contradiction there is that the utilization of that fleet and people moving away from private ownership into car sharing basically contributes massively to the overall efficiency and brings cars away and brings cars out of the city. Still, they perceive that as a threat, and also specifically a threat to the public transport system, and this needs to change. Paris, all of you are aware of that voting coming up on banning e-scooters from the streets, where we see, of course, we're all aware of the specific problems, right? I mean, there are scooters lying at the sidewalks and blocking those, but this is something that can be solved. Banning scooters and scooter companies from entire city landscapes is a way too radical solution. So we're actually thinking about how we can contribute to get away of these nuisances or reduce the number of those, so those mobility options get a well accepted part of the overall mobility ecosystem. And the third one, that's what I regularly hear when talking to public transport authorities and also politicians, is that there is a certain fear that those new mobility options like micromobility take away utilization from public transport systems, and it threatens the justifications for so much money to be spent on those public transport systems, where at the same time, it's clear that the extension of a healthy public transport network is micromobility to bring the users to where they want to go on the very last mile. The second thesis that I want to bring in today is one view that's a rather theoretical one, but I think still interesting to take a look at. So what I see is that mobility is, and mobility operators, they operate in a value network and not necessarily a value chain. So some of you might know the Michael Porter concept of a value chain, where we have a supplier, then we have a customer of that supplier, and then maybe the consumer, the end customer. Where we feel that in a lot of discussions, when we engage with companies out there who potentially are partners or customers, as you might all call it, it's a different hierarchy set and how you are treated in terms of being put in a box, being bound by 10 pages long service level agreements and what exactly you have to do and what exactly you have to provide. And this completely takes out the opportunity for co-creation, an opportunity to create new aspects together. So what we are effectively in this industry is a super complex value network, where all those companies effectively interact, and all those companies bring their share to create that seamless digital user experience for the citizen of the future. And one example that I want to bring in today is our cooperation with Swabi, because I think this is one of the cases where we think think a little bit across the corner in terms of working with a company that is building infrastructure hubs in cities where the micromobility batteries are charged and made available, whereas we add our technology platform and street crowd community to bridge the gap between the demand from the fleet side, from the scooter side or bicycle side or scooter side, and on the other hand, the energy side. So this is, I think, one of the cases, and where we're going to put out technically joint offers whenever it applies to really solve those issues that a lot of fleet operators currently have, and that's the cost side of charging. Thesis number 3 is a different look, and now we're taking a look at the mobility ecosystem, but also the energy ecosystem. So what I clearly feel is that mobility will actively drive the energy transition. So at the moment, and that transition is happening. The transition to renewable energy is not a question of whether it's going to happen, it's a question of when, how fast it's going to happen, right? And so far, mobility towards the energy ecosystem has been a downstream consumer of energy, right? It's just consume. Whereas now, mobility starts to become an active contributor to the ecosystem. So how's that? We've been working with a number of utility companies here in Europe, and they all are in the phase of transitioning to renewable energies. And what that means is that renewable energies suddenly creates the need to make the demand side much more flexible to keep the grid in balance. So the production is not as controllable as it is as with fossil fuels. So you need to start to steer the demand side accordingly. And that's exactly what we're working on with those energy companies in terms of utilizing those thousands and thousands of EVs that we operate with and make them a huge battery at the end of the day, where we can start to peak shave, load shift, and introduce bidirectional charging to be part also of that energy ecosystem. So I see mobility generating in the future a tremendous amount of value in the ecosystem, and which will allow us, the mobility side, to actually offer its services at radically lower cost at the end of the day. So just to give you an idea of dimension here, Apple has announced their big new energy storage farm, and they're currently setting it up in California, which has a total capacity of 240 gigawatts. If we take all the EVs that are under management here at Ubiq, we come to the same amount of 240 gigawatts of battery space that we manage. So there was my approach to the topic of cooperation with the 3 theses. I hope there were interesting aspects in for you from different perspectives. Thanks very much for your attention, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Excellent. All right. Hey, thank you so much for that, Christian. I really appreciate it. Right, I found that super fascinating, especially that last point about the energy storage. I think it's kind of amazing how much how many kilowatts or gigawatt hours you can put in cars and have them drive around. Now, in terms of questions, I don't see any specifically that have come in that Jess already hasn't jumped in and sorted out. But we've got a couple of thank you Christians. Thank you very much. Anybody else who has any questions, please by all means drop them in the chat. Marvelous. Okay. All right. Well, I think that will be. Oh, charging station battery. Can ask questions around that. Do you know of any? I think there's always a really interesting question. So I've seen. I don't know if you've seen this as well, Christian, but there's been like there's a new company that's out of the UK that's using flywheels to be able to build up a huge amount of storing energy at the charging station in order to be able to increase the capacity of the charging station from being like a 25 kilowatt hour charger to a 300 kilowatt hour charger. Do you know what's your sense on that? What do you where do you think that do you think that will be common? Do you think that will become less relevant over time?
I think that the key to creating value for the mobility ecosystem is decentralization of battery storage, of energy storage. So specifically in a city, that's a huge challenge because you don't have a big fat cable where you can send amps through everywhere, right? So batteries, and it might be a flywheel or a intermediate battery for storage, can basically absorb all the energy in the non-utilization time overnight, for example, and then give it to the small, let's say, scooter batteries or any other mobility batteries when it's needed. So yes, these centralized forms of energy storage are going to play a huge role. And I've just seen today an announcement of a, I think, 20 million Series A of a company called Instagrid. They exactly provide those batteries which are typically used for intermediate storage of energy.
Catch you. Yeah, marvelous. We have another question here from Alexandra. How do you see the operational challenges swapping stations can have? How do you see, or how do you think the operational challenges for swapping stations can be overcome, and maybe be another kind of tweak on that?
So we have a number of companies out there who have those swapping stations around, right? And we have tons and tons of scooter operators out there. What we hear from both sides is that the missing link is actually a intelligent number of people doing the right swap at the right time. And the right swap is defined in terms of, okay, what's the next vehicle that's going to be used? So that's the next vehicle you wanna swap the battery for. So actually you need some intelligence to steer the interaction between those two worlds. At the moment, this is exactly one of the huge challenges to make that happen.
We have another. We've got a couple more. Does it seem profitable to gather rental of mopeds and motorcycles along with swap stations?
Does it seem profitable?
I guess renting mopeds and motorcycles at the swap stations, perhaps.
Yes and no. I mean, the swap stations are more, they're not necessarily mobility stations. They're really the stations where the battery swapping happens. To have a minimum supply of vehicles there, yes, makes sense. On the other hand, you don't want to have too much vehicles cluttered because demand is everywhere at the same time, right? So it's utilizing them as a hub to do the swap and then bring that whatever vehicle to the position where it's going to be rented next.
Fantastic. I've got one here from Sebastian. Are your 10 cities to street cred mainly deployed in the DACH region, which I'm going to assume is something related to
it's Germany, Austria, Switzerland. Yeah, exactly. Actually, no. I mean, as I said, we started off with the service in Seattle. That was our very first customer. So not just around the corner necessarily. We're still active in US. As I mentioned, Latin is going very, very strong. In Europe, we're live in Budapest, in Warsaw, in Prague. Yes, also in, of course, Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, Vienna, and the likes. And currently entering Netherlands and Belgium very strongly. So all across Europe very soon.
Fantastic. And final question: how can mobility companies and energy providers work along to provide the proper transition with enraging, I would say, engaging citizens at the cities?
That's the key question. That's a big question.
The other way to ask it is, how do they do it without enraging their own citizens? Because I think that's also part of the challenge, right?
That's also part of the challenge, especially if you take a look at the energy prices. I think I think it's about creating those value networks. I was referring to previously, right? Because actually, we did some modeling with some utility providers, and the value that an electric vehicle can bring to the grid is as high as 50% like the energy it consumes. So potentially, I can have half the energy price, for an EV, because it contributes in other ways to the energy grid at the same time. So I think these are the concepts that are worth taking a look at, and will make it possible to scale out those new forms of mobility, which are not necessarily owning a vehicle, right? I think it's a lot about sharing. And cities, as has been talked previously, cities really get their grip on putting in strong restrictions, making it super expensive to own a large type of vehicle in a city. So that transition is going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much, Christian. I really appreciate you sticking around to answer these questions at the end. And folks who do want to track you down, I assume that there's if they just contact Ubiq, that they'll be able to get in touch with you.
Absolutely. I'll just share my email address here. Feel free to also ping me on LinkedIn. Very happy to get in touch with you and yeah, dig deeper into potential collaborations. Oliver,
Excellent.
thanks a lot for hosting this. It was a pleasure.
Most welcome. Hey, pleasure to have you on. Thanks so much, team.